We are in unprecedented times. America has never been like this. It's never been worse. Or that's what we hear almost on a daily basis. This makes it really hard to understand the actual risks and what's happening today versus what America has already gone through. The challenges that America faces today are real, and some of them are very scary and dangerous. But which ones? We have war, we have inflation, we have high gas prices, we have social unrest, and we have economic problems. Let's look at, in modern day, what parts of those we have been through, but what's different? What are the real forces that we need to be worried about today? This is a defining era, no doubt about it. The United States is in a major transformation time. We are leaving an era going into another one. We have disruptive technology that is so powerful. We have unrest globally with both our enemies, our allies. We are at war. And economically, there are major issues like the wealth gap, rising oil prices, and inflation. These are all real challenges we face today. It's important that we put some of these into context and understand how this has played out before, and to identify the ones that we really don't have context for. And the unknown future can be really scary. To focus on and prioritize in all of the noise, what actually matters right now, today, for the future, and what are things that we will naturally get through and overcome. We're not going back in the United States to times where it isn't modern history, and we really can't relate or compare because the world is so wildly different. Now, every single time you go through large expansions and large periods of time with new generation, new technology, things are different. But a lot of things are the same and they repeat. The closest we can get is to look at an era that was wildly similar to today. But for a lot of it, it was much worse. Now, there are some things about today that are far and beyond more problematic than this time. You see, 1963 to 1975 was an era of turmoil, and one that actually looks a lot like today. And it's interesting how history can glaze over these periods and remember things that are good and kind of ignore some of the major challenges that we had, and definitely don't condense them into a period of time where we don't even know all of those things were going on at the same time. But when you're in it and you're feeling it and you're being bombarded with news, data, and the worst of the worst every single day, it comes at us nonstop today. No other generation has ever had this challenge. But let's look back to this era that is wildly similar. If you think political unrest and violence is bad today, well, when we go back to this era, we're talking about major issues. We had 4 major political assassinations during this time. We had JFK, Malcolm X, MLK, and RFK all during the same period of time. 4 students were shot and killed by the National Guard at a college. This is 4 major political assassinations and government-backed killing of college students in just a 5-year period of time. That doesn't take into account all the other murders and everything else that was going on, which today our murder rate is lower by far. The civil unrest during this time was wild. Over 100 cities erupted into mass riots over MLK's assassination. At the Democratic National Convention, police were out beating down protesters on live TV. There were multiple domestic terrorist groups within the United States that were active, and they were bombing the Capitol, the Pentagon, and NYPD. The National Guard was deployed domestically multiple times. At the same time, we were in a war, but we had the draft. We're talking about 60,000 Americans were killed. The draft was mandatory. And when soldiers came home, there was no support, no benefits, and they were called baby killers. To a war in which they were mandated and drafted to go to, whether they agreed with it or not. Economically, very similar. We had the oil embargoes. Gas lines stretched for miles, and we were rationing gas based upon license plate numbers. We had stagflation. Inflation hit 14% while unemployment was rising simultaneously, and it was going really high. Interest rates hit 21%. 21% during this time. And we had 2 recessions back to back. At the same time, we were facing constitutional crisis. We had a sitting president that had to resign, and a VP that resigned for corruption. The country had 2 unelected leaders at the same time. Now, today's challenges are very similar in a lot of ways, but they're also different. Some of them aren't nearly as big as during that time. But the ones that are similar are eerily similar, and that casts a major shadow of caution, like inflation, stagflation, oil crisis, civil unrest, and political unrest. But not to the degree that we saw it. But there are other things that are shaping our future in which we did not see during this time. For instance, the debt crisis that we are having within the United States, where we have unprecedented government debt, both federally and locally. We are already seeing oil shocks. Now, nowhere even close to the degree, but in times like this, spikes in the cost of oil and gas and inflation are dangerous, and they hit people hard after a time of constant inflation where people can't afford the basics lots of times. We don't have unemployment nearly where it was, but the labor market is softening. The fears of stagflation, like we saw, are real. We have a war. Now, we don't have a draft, and some are arguing whether it's really a war or not, but we have a war. Now, one of the biggest differences, we see all of it all of the time. The social stress and strain is a real thing. On top of financial strain through difficult economic times, that puts massive pressure on people. Interest rates, I would say, are high, but historically they're really not. Now, interest rates are high for anyone that was really born in the 2000s, because we went through an unprecedented time of historically low interest rates, almost to the point of free. So the shock of going from a time like that to 6 to 7% interest rates on a 30-year mortgage is big. This is also on top of a housing crisis that the United States is facing. Home affordability is probably worse than it's ever been. You see, what's important here are both the things that are different and the things that are the same. It's important to realize that as a country, even in modern times, we have been through things that are very, very similar. Now, the outliers are bigger ones, and they could act as leverage points. Some of the problems that they had back then, we don't have today. But other ones can be even more difficult, like the financial strain of the massive debt loads that the government, once again, federally, locally, are having. And those are big. The changing landscape and uncertainty of AI and advances in technology. There seems to be more uncertainty today, and especially because I think a large belief is things could and are going to get worse. Now, whether they do or not, we'll see. But right now, there is the feeling in the air that it is. Now, on the other side of that, we have a lot better landscape than they had back then. Opportunity and resources that they just didn't have. You're talking about a time when you couldn't even get gas for a car that you needed to go to work. Homes were unaffordable because interest rates reached 20%. Most people thought they would never in their life ever own a home. Now, that is where we come to this dividing point that we're at today. Will the future look more similar to back then? Or will we turn a corner and economic prosperity, not for just some, but for all, will return? Will inflation settle down and keep going down? That would really depend on oil prices right now. We had been on a great trajectory, but oil is in everything. Manufacturing, it's in products, services, everything depends on oil, not just gas. So the inflationary effect of it is real. At a time when there is so much capital in the system, trillions of dollars sitting on the sideline waiting to be deployed, and trillions of dollars in short-term investments like debt that is waiting to roll over and go back in. Interest rates being high has slowed down the movement of money, and it's not being injected or invested. That is very different than back then, meaning that small moves in the right direction can have really big positive effects. At the same time, we are facing some political unrest, especially with midterms coming up, and how that could change the political landscape. But most of all, there's so much information. And what I've seen is that information coming in is freezing people. We don't know what to do. And it clouds a lot of what is going on in our daily lives to a massive darkness of things that ordinarily you would have never even saw or known was happening at the time. Your direct day-to-day life not being affected by some of the horrible things that are going on in the world, today it is. We're seeing it and we're hearing about it. So, with these massive headwinds that we're facing, that unknown, that uncertainty that we have in the United States, that kills progress. That makes it hard for individuals to take action and move forward because of the unknowns. That's why I think that it is so important to diagnose correctly and understand what the immediate effects of you and your position are and the opportunities to focus, to understand and prioritize to what is important to you and in your life, to become unfrozen and to be able to move forward in confidence. Now, that is difficult with unknowns, and that's why it is so important to draw back in, to look, to measure, and analyze your situation and what's going on appropriately. Because in times of confusion and when people are moving is also the time of the greatest opportunities. But most people miss them. And instead of being guided by logic, being pragmatic, analyzing risk to reward appropriately, they cease to function and they shut down, therefore missing opportunities that are right in front of them. And that is a challenge because I'm not saying that those problems aren't real. I'm not saying they don't exist. But when things that don't actually affect you or your opportunities or risks start to cloud your judgment and make it so you can't move, they're controlling you. They're taking over. We have headwinds in the United States. We have in the past, and trust me, we will in the future. But two, a lot of them aren't nearly as bad as things like we saw in 2008 economically, which was a far worse position for the United States and the world. And this is the key when you are investing, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're running a business, you have to be able to move forward in uncertainty, fear, and doubt. That is actually a caveat to being successful in life, because there will never be a perfect situation, there will never be bad things not happening, and there will never be a time in which there won't be something to be afraid of. The question is, in today's environment, can you move forward in confidence, actually prioritizing, breaking things apart, looking at them individually, compartmentalizing them so you can handle them and take care of things one at a time, moving your position forward, and also spotting opportunity in a changing landscape when everyone else is frozen and unable to move. Those are the ones that will succeed, that will thrive in the future. So my question for you is, how are you doing that today? And what are you doing to position yourself in a world of change to come out ahead? Let me know in the comments and let me know what you're seeing.